This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today here on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Here are your top stories. Countries around the world report a surge in COVID-19 infections as others relax restrictions. US and France seek to mend ties after fallout over Australia's submarine deal. And Russia says NATO's determined plan shows it was right to cut ties with the alliance. We begin with health matters. COVID is spreading fast in many parts of the world. In Russia, Friday was the second consecutive day of record cases and the fourth straight day of record deaths. Moscow will reimpose a partial lockdown on October the 28th. In Britain, nearly 50,000 new cases were recorded after most restrictions were lifted. The country has reported more than 40,000 infections for 10 days running. The Australian state of Victoria recorded more than 17,000 cases and 9 deaths on Friday. The state's capital, Melbourne, has just come out of the world's longest lockdown. Meanwhile, the Chinese mainland has reported 50 new COVID-19 infections, including 38 local cases. Huang Yue has more from Beijing.
16 of the newly registered cases yesterday were in Gansu, 11 in Inner Mongolia, 6 in Beijing, 3 in Ningxia, and 1 in Yunnan. Among the confirmed cases in Gansu, 12 are from a same tour group, including tourists, 2 drivers, and a tourist guide. And they had traveled to Ajin Banner of Inner Mongolia and also traveled to several sites in Gansu province. Others are close contacts of these people. So as you can see, Ajin Banner of Inner Mongolia is one of the key areas in this round of flare-up. This place now has a total of 24 confirmed cases, and actually this is a famous tourist destination, especially during autumn, because every October a large number of tourists from all over the country will go there to visit its populous Euphratica forest. So now for this place is the peak travel season of the year, and that's why so far nearly 10,000 tourists have been held up there, and the local authorities are trying their best to take care of them and arrange the tests for them. Also, hotels and restaurants there have started to provide free lunch to these tourists since yesterday. While among the 3 new cases in Ningxia, 2 are also from a same tourist group, which consists of 10 people. So far, 6 members of this group have been confirmed infections. The 1 new case reported in Yunnan is a close contact of previous cases. So far, across the whole country, there were 2 high-risk areas, which are in Ajin Banner of Inner Mongolia and in Beijing, and 8 medium-risk areas in Inner Mongolia, Gansu, and Guizhou. And since these sporadic cases are all linked to trans-regional travel, the Chinese authorities have called on the regions to work together and share information in a timely manner to block the transmission chain of the virus.
Well, several countries are, however, reopening their borders. The U.S. will allow fully vaccinated visitors from more countries starting from November the 8th. That includes people from more than 30 countries who've been barred since last March. And in Australia, vaccinated citizens and permanent residents will be able to travel internationally next month. The country is moving away from its strict zero COVID strategy after 18 months of some of the world's toughest border restrictions. New Zealand says it'll end lockdown measures and restore more freedoms when 90% of its eligible population is fully vaccinated. Israel, meanwhile, will reopen next month to fully vaccinated tourists. The U.S. says its COVID-19 booster program is off to a strong start. Health officials have approved a mix-and-match approach in addition to booster shots from Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Meanwhile, Pfizer says its vaccine is 91% effective for children aged 5 to 11. As Nick Harper reports, vaccinations for these children could start next month.
The White House says 70 million Americans are now eligible for booster shots, and they can choose which one they receive. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has approved boosters of Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. and patients can choose what they get, even if it's different from what they were originally inoculated with. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky, though, said officials are not recommending one booster over another.
We will not articulate a preference. My understanding is that most people will have done largely well with the initial vaccine that they got and may express a preference very much for the original vaccine series they got, having done very well. There may be some people who might prefer another vaccine over the one that they received, and the current CDC recommendations now make that possible.
10 million Americans have already received booster shots, and the White House says another 50 million will become eligible in the coming months. People who originally received Pfizer or Moderna doses more than 6 months ago and are aged 65 or older or at high risk are eligible, while anyone who initially received the single-shot J&J dose 2 months or more ago is now eligible. And now children could also soon be in line to start receiving COVID-19 vaccinations. Trial data from Pfizer shows that its dose is highly effective in 5 to 11-year-olds. And next week, Food and Drug Administration advisors will decide whether to recommend vaccinations for children. However, there's growing concern about state restrictions. More than half of America's 50 states have now introduced laws making it harder for authorities to address the health crisis. At least 32 states have put in place measures such as banning mask or vaccine mandates. Health officials are worried it will prevent them from imposing a range of measures, including quarantines, if there's a surge in cases over the winter months. Nick Harper, CGTN, Washington.
Leaders of France and the United States have discussed boosting defenses in Europe. This comes as the two countries work to mend fences after a rift over submarine contracts involving Australia and Britain. Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron, in a phone conversation, also discussed efforts to support stability and security in the Sahel region and enhance cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The two leaders are meeting in Rome later this month at a summit of leaders from the group of 20 major economies. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will also visit France next month. She will meet with Macron and participate in the Paris conference on Libya on November the 12th. The Kremlin says NATO's new plan to deter Russia fully justifies Moscow's decision to end all official dialogue with the alliance. A master plan agreed by NATO defense ministers this week included statements to defend against potential Russian threats on multiple fronts. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said a Russia-NATO dialogue under such conditions is unnecessary. He also said Russia has never harbored any illusion regarding NATO, adding that the alliance was conceived and formed from confrontation. Days earlier, Russia cut relations by shutting its diplomatic mission to NATO and the alliance's mission in Moscow after NATO expelled 8 Russians alleged of spying. The U.S. Defense Secretary has also weighed in on the worsening relations.
I think what President Biden wants out of any kind of relationship with Russia is predictability and stability. And I think with nations like ours, I think that's very, very important. Again, we want to make sure that we continue to support our allies and partners in their desire to protect their sovereign territory and their desire to increase their resilience.
A 2-day European Union summit has wrapped up. Tributes were paid to outgoing German Chancellor Angela Merkel. There were no agreements on the energy crunch facing the bloc, and Poland was told to respect EU law. Giles Gibson has more now from Brussels.
At the end of this 2-day summit here in Brussels, there was a sense that Europe's leaders agreed on the biggest challenges currently facing the bloc, but not exactly on what the responses to those challenges should be. When it comes to rising energy prices as we head into the winter months here in Europe, the European Commission has committed to exploring joint procurement of natural gas, as well as looking into establishing a strategic gas reserve before the next European Council meeting coming up in the middle of December. When it comes to migration and this surge in undocumented migrants coming into countries in the east of the European Union from Belarus. Lithuania's president, amongst others, had actually proposed building some sort of physical fence or even a border wall along the eastern frontier of the EU. But the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pushed back very strongly against that idea, saying that as far as the European Commission is concerned, they don't want to see funding for barbed wire or walls. When it comes to the long-standing dispute between Warsaw and Brussels over the rule of law in Poland, we heard from French President Emmanuel Macron saying that they need to see concrete moves from Poland, including steps to reassure Brussels that they are restoring the independence of the judiciary. And just finally, this was a bit of a swan song for one of the European leaders at this summit. If German political parties can work out a new governing coalition before the next European Council meeting in the middle of December, then this will be the 107th and final EU summit for German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She got a bit of a tribute from the European Council President Charles Michel, saying that an EU summit without Angela Merkel is like Paris without the Eiffel Tower. And she also got a special video tribute from former US President Barack Obama. Giles Gibson, CGTN, Brussels.
Global oil prices have climbed as tight supplies persist. In the UK, prices at the pump have reached their highest level in 8 years. The average price of a litre of gas has reached £1.35 or 73 cents. In Japan, the average price of regular gasoline has hit a 7-year high at 166 yen or $1.46 per litre. In South Korea, the average gasoline price nationwide stands at around 1,700 won or $1.45 per litre, the highest since 2014. Higher oil prices and lower fuel production have pushed up fuel prices in the United States as well. The average national cost is around 89 cents per litre, and in Los Angeles, the average price has risen for several days, resulting in the biggest weekly jump since March. Residents there are complaining about the rising cost.
It is actually, it's a really big problem because I mean gas prices like about $4 now, and I mean if somebody makes about $10 an hour, I mean it's a big problem for them to even fill up their gas tank because it's like $65. But prices has been going up day by day, and even like gas and then even groceries and everything, the prices are skyrocketing.
It's crazy because for me, it takes to fill up my car like $60 every week. Before it used to be $40.
Wow. So it's $20
so it went
up.
Yeah, $20 up. So it's very crazy to me.
Wow.
Spending $60 a week for gas, it's just crazy.
And that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent on Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The United Nations suspends humanitarian flights to Tigray's capital as fighting rages on in northern Ethiopia. Tunisia imposes COVID-19 passes requirement on all its citizens and foreign visitors. And the murder of Kenyan athlete Agnes Tirop spotlights rising cases of gender-based violence. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour, in business, DRC port workers clash with police in standoff over unpaid salaries. And in sports, South Africa's fearless female motorcycle rider Kirsten Landman eyes another slice of Dakar rally history. We begin the top of the hour in Ethiopia, where the United Nations has suspended all flights to the Tigray capital of Mekelle. This after a UN humanitarian plane with 11 passengers had to abort landing on Friday. According to the UN, the flight from Addis Ababa was forced to turn back following airstrikes on Mekelle. The government says the latest attack targeted a TPLF military training facility. Since November last year, fighting between Ethiopia's federal forces and Tigray rebels has killed hundreds. The UN says more than 7 million people are now in need of humanitarian assistance.
A UN humanitarian flight that departed Addis Ababa this morning was first forced to turn back in the midst of its flight after airstrikes began in Mekelle. I can confirm that the government was informed of that flight before it took off, and of course also confirmed that the flight was forced to turn back in midair because of the events on the ground. While we're still ascertaining all of the facts in relation to this event, we're obviously concerned about what has taken place today and what it means for humanitarian operations in northern Ethiopia moving forward. Today, there are around 7 million people in northern Ethiopia in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. That includes over 5 million people in the Tigray region, and the other 2 million are split between Amhara and Afar.
Meanwhile, Tigray rebels say they've captured over 400 government soldiers and allied militias in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Celebratory gunfire and car horns could be heard as trucks full of captured soldiers made their way through Mekelle. In recent months, fighting has spread into the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions. Well, CGTN's Girum Chala has the latest from Addis Ababa. Girum, as we're hearing there, the United Nations has suspended flights to Tigray's capital, Mekelle. How are Ethiopian authorities responding to this latest decision by the UN? Well, we will see if we can get Girum for further comment on that. Meanwhile, Tunisia is imposing COVID-19 vaccine passes on all its citizen and foreign visitors. The presidential decree issued on Friday states that authorities will give a pass to every person who's received vaccination and foreign visitors who present a certificate of vaccination upon arrival to the country. The vaccine pass will also be a necessary document for traveling abroad and allow people to access public and private places. These include cafes, restaurants, hotels, and tourist establishments. According to Tunisia's Ministry of Health, more than 4.2 million Tunisians have been fully vaccinated. Last month, authorities lifted the night curfew as infections in the country dropped. To South Africa now, where the country has begun inoculating teenagers as part of the country's COVID-19 vaccination program. The new cohort, consisting of 12 to 17-year-olds, will receive just one dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. The country's health department has begun vaccinating the youth after carefully considering potential safety issues. Those include the inflammation of the heart muscle observed in male adolescents and young adults. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
South Africa's COVID-19 vaccination program is picking up speed as the country makes more vaccines available. Now the Department of Health has added a new cohort to the vaccination program. Children aged between 12 and 17 years old are now eligible for inoculation. Some youth are clearly encouraged that their time to receive the jab has finally arrived.
Well, most of us there in the school are vaccinated, and most of us, we have our social distance, we have our masks on, and yeah, we keep it to the rules of the government.
Expanding South Africa's vaccination program to include teens has added another 6 million people to the program and further boosted the country's fight against the pandemic. While the slow uptake of vaccinations in people over 50 years of age remains a concern for health officials, some in the community hope the youth will be more open to getting vaccinated.
Because the 12 to 17-year-old groups are more interactive, they're more together, they want to be more out and things to do. So it's good that they should get vaccinated because they're more interactive.
While more than 20 million South Africans have already been vaccinated, the government hopes the new cohort will push that figure even higher and closer to some sort of population immunity. While issues such as myocarditis has been attributed to inoculations, health experts still believe the vaccines remain relatively safe for use in teenagers.
The idea, I think, with mass vaccination is to reduce everybody's high risk across the board. And so, I think by vaccinating these individuals, we are still taking into consideration a risk and a benefit ratio. And luckily that myocarditis is rare. When it does occur, it seems to be mild and self-limiting.
To further mitigate the safety of vaccinations in children, the government plans to only administer a single dose until further research and data is collected that can inform future decisions. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, taking you back to our top story here on Africa Live, where the United Nations has suspended all flights to the Tigray capital of Mekelle in Ethiopia. This came after a UN humanitarian plane with 11 passengers was forced to abort landing on Friday. According to the UN, the flight from Addis Ababa was forced to turn back following airstrikes on Mekelle. Well, let's get further details on this. CGTN's Girum Chala is standing by for us in Addis Ababa and fully audible. Girum, the UN has suspended flights to Tigray's capital, Mekelle. How are Ethiopian authorities responding to this latest decision?
Well, Maya, first of all, these humanitarian flights started a few months back in order to provide the basic support for humanitarian activities in Mekelle city. So they've been transporting cash and other things. Now that has been suspended, as we have heard, and Ethiopian authorities were also informed about it. Authorities we spoke to at the foreign ministry are saying that, well, they regret the happening as war is continuing. Insecurity is not going to allow humanitarian activities to continue normally. So they hope that in the next few days these humanitarian flights will resume, hopefully. But until then, we should wait and see these developments. Unfortunately, war has continued and fightings are also escalating in the three regions, Amhara, Afar and the Tigray regional state, Mahia.
And Girum, the UN has already warned that 7 million people are in need of urgent humanitarian aid there. How is this suspension of flights going to affect humanitarian activities in the affected region?
They will definitely affect humanitarian activities because these flights, as I was saying earlier, we're supporting humanitarian activities on the ground. We're also supporting the staff, including paying their salaries and providing them cash and other things. These are people that the UN referring to who are going to be affected or are already affected by the situation in the north, live in the three regional states, not only in the Tigray regional state, but Afar and also the Amhara regional state. So supporting these people, providing them food, shelter, water and other services is really something that needs to be done in every day every hour basis, and this has already been in a short situation before. The UN is complaining that as much as it wanted, it was not providing food services, including the Tigray regional state. So this flight pause is going to affect, of course, the people who are supposed to be provided with humanitarian assistance. But there is also another problem, Mahia, just to bring it to your attention. Trucks are already in short supply. The United Nations has been also confirming this. The government is saying that those trucks, hundreds of them, which have entered the Tigray regional state, never returned, and that has created a lot of problem when it comes to delivering food aid for those people who are in dire need of these assistance. So already there is an existing problem of lack of trucks, shortage of trucks, a huge problem there, and now the pause of the humanitarian flights. So this is really a serious situation, Maya.
And finally, Girum, rebels in Tigray have also paraded government soldiers that they say were captured in the region. How is the government reacting to this?
Well, we have seen those footages coming from the Tigray regional state, the state TV, and also from social media. By the way, we spoke to, again, Foreign Ministry and the NDF officials. They're saying that they cannot verify if this is really a genuine, truthful video that has been released. One. Two, the TPLF is acting out of law, because even if this is a war, according to them, there is a law, and these are legally, they are supposed to be held legally and also be protected, not paraded like they have been done before, and as you have seen it, full of trucks at the same time. So this is really an international crime, and even war has its own laws, and it was not supposed to happen, even if we can verify this or not. So that's what they are saying, and they are not really happy with the situation that the TPLF is handling, even if these are legal soldiers or not. So also we have to understand that the war at the moment is now spreading in different sides of the regions, the three regions I was earlier mentioning, and in the next few days the humanitarian situation also needs to be addressed. This needs to be emphasized, and the government also confirms that it wants to work with the UN time and again.
All right, thank you for keeping us updated here on Africa Live. Girum Chala there joining us from Addis Ababa. Well, crossing the border, the funeral service of slain Olympian and world record holder Agnes Tirop is currently underway in her rural home in Nandi County in northern Kenya. The fallen star, who would have celebrated her 26th birthday today, was murdered 10 days ago with her estranged husband Ibrahim Rotich in custody as the prime suspect in the brutal killing. Thousands of mourners, including elite Kenyan athletes, government officials and representatives from governing body World Athletics, are attending the burial. Authorities are calling for patience, promising that full investigations will take place to determine the motive of the murder that has shocked a nation and the world. Tirop's friends, family and fellow athletes have been eulogizing the women's 10 kilometers world record holder at the emotional funeral.
A bad moment to us. And Agnes Tirop is our champion. I remember many things to Agnes Tirop. First of all, I remember him when he won a record in Germany. I was the one who gave a flower after winning, after breaking record. It was so sad to me.
I remember Agnes in 2019 when we are in World Championship, because Agnes got a bronze medalist in the 10,000 and I got a bronze medalist in marathon. So Agnes, we share a light moment with Agnes, and after the race, because 10,000 was about almost the same day with the marathon, because Agnes was in we are the same in management with Agnes. Chiani the marathon at the promotion, and we get the same medal, bronze in 10,000, and I got bronze in marathon. So on that time, we really say, wow, you get a bronze, and we are the same in family of athletics. So it's really painful.
Well, a medal minting runner since she was a teenager, Agnes Tirop won the women's 10,000 meters bronze medal for Kenya at the London 2017 and Doha 2019 World Championships. Before her untimely death, she broke the world record in a 10-kilometer women-only event. She set a time of 30 minutes and 1 second in Germany on the 12th of September to shatter the previous mark by 28 seconds. Earlier this month, she came second in the Giants Geneva race behind Kalkidan Gezahegne in a time of 30 minutes and 20 seconds. On the 2nd of August, Tirop ran 14 minutes, 39.62 seconds to finish fourth in the women's 5,000 meters final at the Tokyo Olympics in Japan, losing the bronze to Ethiopia's Gudaf Tsegai by less than a second. Well, let's get more on this story now. Sadiq Shaban joins us from Kapsabet town in Nandi County. Sadiq, as we're hearing, Agnes Tirop will be laid to rest shortly in what is, I'm sure, an emotional day, a couple of days there. Tell us more about that and the ongoing police investigations into her murder.
Yeah, you're right, Mahia. That burial ceremony and prayers going on just a few meters from where I am. In the past few minutes, athletes from Uganda, including Joshua Cheptegei, the reigning Olympic champion, Peru Chemutai, the women's 3,000 meters champion, have arrived in this ceremony, as well as you mentioned, representatives from World Athletics. They are talking about the life of Agnes Tirop, whose life was cut short, with pleas to the government, to the investigative authorities, to ensure that no stone is left unturned, so to speak, and that the killer or the alleged suspect is brought to book. We are aware that already he's been arraigned and he will face his time in courts in the coming days. Mahia, the speakers that are speaking in this funeral are calling on authorities to do more to protect, particularly the vulnerable sportsmen and women of Kenya. There have been calls, particularly during this burial, by female athletes asking the National Olympic Committee of Kenya and the Athletics Federation to spend more time listening to athletes, to spend more time particularly increasing the gender inclusion in terms of coaches and other technical officials into the sport, to be able to give the girls and women in athletics time to be able to confide, so to speak, when matters such as this are happening. We have also heard during this burial issues about mental health being projected very clearly, with calls such as the government to include the issue of athletes' wellness and mental being in their planning. And there have been calls, in fact, for budgetary allocation, really, to try and help athletes, especially those who may have suffered during the lockdown occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic last year. So Agnes Tirop will be laid to rest shortly in her rural home. People are still shocked here at the murder, but they are saying let this be the last moment that they are gathering, not to celebrate an achievement of an athlete, but an event like this. And they are calling on government and everybody to be able to not just have a conversation at this stage, but also to do something about it. So it's going to be a long day here, Maya, very emotional indeed, as you mentioned. And for the people of this place, they are saying they have lost one of their own at just a tender age of 25.
And Sadiq, as you mentioned there, gender-based violence among athletes is reported to be a matter of concern here in Kenya. Why is this the case, and how is the issue then being addressed?
Mahia, the issue of Samuel Wanjiru, who died in controversial circumstances about 12 years ago, was also revisited in this burial. And speakers after speaker are calling on the government to expedite investigation into that case, which was also controversial in nature. And now they are talking about Agnes Tirop, saying the sport of athletics, and not just athletics, but other sports across the country, need to take a very closer look at the plight of particularly women. There have been cases we have reported of gender-based violence, even in basketball in Kenya, and speakers are calling on government and the sports ministry to hasten the investigation into allegations and into reports of gender-based violence, calling on protection of the victims, and quick justice should be dispensed, they say, to the suspects and the perpetrators of gender-based violence. They are calling on government to take a leaf from what was discussed at the Olympic Games. Athletes from around the world spoke about the issue of mental health. They wanted the same conversation here in Kenya, but they are saying again that this should be the last time that an athlete or a sportsman or woman should die as a result of gender-based violence.
All right, Sadiq, thank you very much for speaking to us on Africa Live. Sadiq Shaban in Nandi County, and what is an emotional day in the north of the country. Well, the death of a top Kenyan athlete, Agnes Tirop, has brought to the fore the rising cases of domestic violence and femicide across Africa. The United Nations has called her death the shadow pandemic. Dina Awor, a human rights activist, says the COVID-19 pandemic has only worsened the situation.
The pandemic has strained so many people in terms of resources, economically. For example, in Kenya, we had the lockdowns. So many people could not do their businesses. So it meant that most people that were doing small businesses had to stay at home. And you also recognize that people lost their jobs. So you find that a man and a woman who probably were seeing each other in the evening are spending so much time together with very little resources, but so many problems to be sorted. And so that sometimes brings friction, We must look at the statistics as actual people, not numbers. And it is important that our leadership is seen to carry this issue with the seriousness that it deserves.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up after this short break. South Africa calls for better funding for poorer nations to fight climate change. And we look at how a lack of internet access is affecting women in Nigeria.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Restoration of China's seat in the United Nations was an epic diplomatic battle. A journey fraught with obstacles.
Yes!
Africa's support was crucial. Victory saw a new era in China-Africa ties, founded on a common future and shared prosperity.
Welcome back. Now, South Africa says the gap in funding between developed and developing countries has hampered collective action on the climate change crisis. As a result, South Africa will call on high-income countries at the COP26 climate talks next week to honor promises to help poorer nations. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
An open agreement to fund developing countries who battle climate change remains a major challenge. That's according to the Environmental Affairs Department. Minister Barbara Creecy was speaking ahead of the UN's climate change conference COP26 to be held in Glasgow from next weekend. South Africa wants funds to be directed from rich countries to those whose green transition is critical but underfunded. This is the position that the delegation that will represent the country at the COP26 climate conference will put forward.
Although countries have committed to open and transparent discussions and have shown a willingness to achieve success at COP26, The greatest challenge is expected to be finance issues, where huge differences still exist between developed and developing countries on the finance required for developing and least developed countries to meet the challenges posed by climate change.
South Africa is among the many vulnerable developing countries that are already experiencing the impacts of climate change.
This is evident from the increased frequency of extreme weather conditions such as floods, droughts, heat waves, and all of these things threaten lives, livelihoods, food security, and of course, built infrastructure. It is crucial for South Africa and for Africa as a whole to see the adaptation issue treated in a balanced manner at COP26 and to be on the agenda in Glasgow and to be implemented thereafter.
Minister Chrissy also announced that South Africa is a step closer to receiving funding for its transition away from coal. South Africa is still coal reliant. The national electricity supplier Eskom relies on coal for around 90% of its electricity generation. The minister says the country stands to receive funding from an allocation of between 200 and 500 million US dollars set aside by the Clean Technology Fund.
The most recent governing body meeting of the Climate Investments Fund made a decision to invite South Africa, together with 3 other countries, to participate in the Accelerating Coal Transition Investment Program. Accordingly, we have been asked to develop an investment plan commensurate to an indicative allocation of between $200 and $500 US from the Clean Technology Fund. This allocation includes a $1 million investment plan preparation grant so we can develop the plan.
Chrissy also announced that South Africa will negotiate for the full implementation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Now, a recent report by the United Nations says over 50% of women in Nigeria have no access to the internet. The report adds that over 1.3 million adolescent girls below the age of 18 in the country drop out of school before completing their last year of lower secondary education. Digital communication experts in Nigeria want the government to improve internet reach across the country and education for women to help boost the economy. Our correspondent Tesem Akende reports.
45-year-old Hanatu James sells tomatoes at the Searchlight Market in Jos, north central Nigeria. She uses a mobile phone without internet access.
I don't make use of the internet because I don't have the intellectual ability to engage or surf it. I'm afraid I will never make use of it all my life.
The United Nations says over 50% of Nigerian women are offline with no access to the internet, while 20% are less likely than men to own smartphones, creating an exclusion gap. Experts attribute this disparity to cultural beliefs about educating women, limited internet reach, and access to digital devices.
The internet service providers will not go and put, provide infrastructure where they will not make money. So that's a factor. Certain cultures do not, do not believe that women should amount to anything. I mean, women should just wait there for a suitor to come in and just marry them. They don't believe that women, have the capacity, to amount to anything and then contribute, to the nation and GDP as well.
Digital communication professionals want the government to improve internet access across the country and enroll more women in schools as a way of bridging the digital divide in the country.
If we need to catch up in terms of numbers, then government has to, ensure that these ladies have scholarship, maybe some form of free education, to ensure that they're not left behind. You have a lot of things online, e-commerce and all that, so you cannot afford to be cut off.
President Muhammadu Buhari says his government is committed to increasing internet reach and use by at least 90% of all citizens by 2025. The country's Information Technology Development Agency has also started training women in information communication technology with the aims of creating more jobs and supporting more women by giving them the skills to get online. With such efforts, it is hoped that women like Hanato James, who are not users of the internet, will soon be online. Tassim Akende, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
Well, it's just about time for all the latest in business. Here's what's coming up. DRC port workers clash with police in standoff over unpaid salaries.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
We start off the business in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where hundreds of port workers have clashed with police over unpaid wages. The workers from the Commercial Society of Ports and Transports Companies stormed its headquarters in the capital, Kinshasa, on Friday. The workers broke windows of the building and burnt its furniture, while the police fired tear gas to try and break up the crowds. It was not immediately clear if anyone was injured in the clashes. The workers have been on strike since October the 15th.
The Congolese government should have given us 207 million francs. We haven't been paid for at least 32 months. For the older agents, it's 42 months.
Look at me. I am 61 years old, 42 years of service in the company. I wasn't even among the young people. What kind of police can't respect people? What kind of country is this?
South Africa is pinning its hopes on green hydrogen to lift economic growth and reduce unemployment. According to a feasibility study, green hydrogen could add up to $8.8 billion to South Africa's GDP by 2050. The study was completed in partnership with private sector companies, including Anglo-American Platinum, as well as South Africa's National Hydrogen Society roadmap. The aim is to bring various hydrogen applications together to form a hydrogen valley. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
South Africa's energy transition will see a move away from coal, which will cause thousands of job losses. But the country is concentrating its efforts on developing the green economy. Green hydrogen could be a game changer.
South Africa's reliance upon coal has to change. It's about 85% of the energy supply. Could we at least move our transport addiction, which is mainly to imported petrol and diesel, to a hydrogen cell as a sort of battery form that would allow us transport, particularly on buses and trucks? That would be the pilot. And if Sasol can make that happen, that would be on the basis of green hydrogen. The intense energy needed to create the hydrogen would come from the sun, and into the hydrogen cell itself would go our platinum metals group of rhodium and palladium and platinum.
The feasibility study identifies 9 green hydrogen projects in the mobility, industrial and construction sectors.
Green hydrogen, the electrolyzers produce green hydrogen as well as the cleaner fuel cell trucks. And we were looking at between 14,000 to 30,000 jobs per annum. Tax revenue, we were looking at 3.3 to 8.8 billion US dollars of GDP growth between now and 2050. That's critical because, there's capex required for the electrolyzers that we would put in place to generate green hydrogen. I think between 3 and 6 billion US dollars.
Getting the regulatory environment right is a first priority for South Africa's government.
The small players like the SMEs that will serve as part of the value chains, we're going to put in place a PMO to assist them with ensuring that they can actually bring technologies into the market, but also reduce the legislative and administrative barriers for the work. So I think this PMO is expected to get up and running before the end of the current financial year for government.
A special economic zone in the Northern Cape will be the first location to drive this new sector.
The Northern Cape has the best irradiation in South Africa. You have infrastructure, existing SEZ infrastructure that is in place that is looking to be upgraded to ensure that we can provide green hydrogen and then ship it, put it on ships either as green ammonia and take it to other parts of the world that don't have the great resources that we have.
Grants and concessional funding is expected to drive the initial development stages for green hydrogen production. Some big corporations have already invested to get the ball rolling. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Pan-African payment gateway firm Cellulant has connected with over 120 banks and 40 mobile operators on the continent. This has given the company an almost unparalleled network in Africa. The integrated payments platform caters to both offline and online solutions, supporting businesses of all sizes. Early in the month, Akshay Grover was confirmed as chief executive. Well, it's time for us to take another short break. Here's what's coming up in the sport. South Africa's fearless female motorcycle rider Kirsten Landman eyes another slice of Dakar Rally history.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome to the sport. We start off with the story of Kirsten Landman, the first African woman to complete the grueling Dakar Rally on a motorcycle. The talented enduro rider has just completed the Rally du Maroc and won her class, but now the South African is eager to take on the Dakar again in the Mal Moto category. CGTN's C.S. Du Plessis caught up with the fearless rider.
Kirsten Landman has no fear. Well, at least she doesn't know if she does. In fact, the 30-year-old enduro rider seeks out challenges that scare her. Challenges like her historic 2020 Dakar achievement and most recently the brutal 6-day Rally du Maroc, where she claimed top step on the podium in her motorcycle category.
Yeah, super happy with the results. Of course, we always go there to finish, and it's always a bonus when you can finish on the top in your class and then not too bad against the males. So overall, which I'm really happy about.
Fair to say that this was a dress rehearsal for the Dakar?
For sure. I mean, I honestly thought it would be good training. It's just as a part of training, but I never thought it would be that good. I got to experience the Malimoto side of things, the lack of sleep side of things, the long grueling days in terms of road book. I kind of forgot what it was like to navigate, and to go back there and experience that all was overwhelming, but I couldn't feel better prepared going into Dakar now.
Kirsten, as a trailblazer for women's motorsport in South Africa, do you feel almost a responsibility to seek out these challenges of, Rally du Maroc and the Dakar?
I mean, there's only 3 women in the history that have done Malimoto in the motorcycle category. So that for me it just excites me. We're capable of it, and we're proving to the world that we can do it. And I like to say that I'm proud to be one of those women that are paving the ground for future women, to show them that we can do it, and we can bring on the sponsors and create a platform for sponsors to get the coverage, in developing women in sport.
What are you hoping to achieve from your Dakar experience now, the Malimoto experience, as a human being, as an athlete, and as a competitor?
I want to be able to, tell my story, motivate people, and again, it's just, we are capable. We are no different we're all the same, we're human beings, and it's how you see it that makes the difference, and I don't see any difference between the different, male, female. We're we're all one, and we all have the same passion for the sport. And I think that's what's nice about when you go to the Dakar. No one, yes, you're a girl, but at the end of the day, we all share the same passion. And I think that's what's great about sport in general. It brings us all together, and the camaraderie amongst fellow riders, male, female, it's really great.
Kirsten, thanks so much for your time, and good luck at Dakar 2022.
To Kenya, where a new constitution for the country's troubled cricket national body was passed with amendments in Nairobi on Friday. This clears the path to elections for Cricket Kenya to usher in a new office. The chairperson of the government-appointed Cricket Normalization Committee, retired Lady Justice Joyce Aluoch, has hailed the development as a huge milestone.
We have worked very, very hard. Even just in this room where we are today, we left this room yesterday. It's about 7:30 p.m. And prior to that, we had been, the same day, we had been at Kasarani. So we have given it all that we could. We given it attention with a lot of passion. And I want to assure you that the points that have come up, what you have raised, that's why the Constitution is being adopted with amendments. We are going to look at the amendments because we start our meetings normally at 8 a.m.
It is within your hands today to make a choice that we want to continue to be part of the family of nations that benefit from the ICC, or we want to isolate ourselves into oblivion. And to be quite honest, the world will continue without Kenya. It has continued in the past few years without Kenya. It will continue to do so. And it's my appeal today that if we are men and women of good conscience, we must say Kenya must be part of the family of cricket nations.
To football, from the English Premier League, where Arsenal turned on the style with a confident 3-1 home win over Aston Villa to move into the top half of the table. Gunners manager Mikel Arteta praised ML